In the heart of Manhattan, where billion-dollar deals are made over breakfast and hearts are broken before lunch, two worlds are about to collide in the most spectacular way possible. She's a dreamer who can barely afford ramen noodles. He's a business mogul who just discovered his biggest lie is about to explode in his face during the most important meeting of his career. What happens when desperation meets opportunity? When a week of pretending becomes dangerously real? This is the story of how a business contract became the most dangerous agreement two hearts ever signed, and how sometimes the best things in life come from the worst possible moments. Tell me from which corner of the world you're listening to this story, and have you ever had to pretend to be someone you weren't? For love? The deafening screech of tires on wet Manhattan asphalt cut through the morning air like a battle cry, followed by the metallic symphony of a $60,000 BMW kissing a taco truck at 20 miles per hour. Mother of all spreadsheets! From the BMW emerged a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a GQ magazine and into a nightmare. Jonathan Reed, 32, CEO of Reed Enterprises, stood in his perfectly tailored Armani suit, staring at the disaster before him like he'd just watched his stock portfolio catch fire. My truck, my beautiful, beautiful truck! A young woman with wild curly hair burst from the food truck, wearing a sauce-stained apron that read, "Eat, Pray, Taco." Melissa Santos looked at her crumpled mobile restaurant like a mother watching her child's first steps. In the wrong direction. Off a cliff. "Ma'am, I am so incredibly what?" Melissa spun around, her green eyes blazing with the fury of 1,000 suns. "Incredibly rich? Incredibly stupid? Incredibly about to get sued into the Stone Age?" Jonathan blinked. In his 32 years of existence, no one had ever yelled at him. Board meetings, yes. Hostile takeovers? Absolutely. But actual yelling? This was uncharted territory. I was going to say sorry. Sorry? Melissa laughed, but it sounded more like a hyena having an existential crisis. You just turned my life's work into abstract art, and you're sorry? Look, I'll pay for everything. Insurance, damages, whatever you need. What I need, Melissa interrupted, climbing onto what remained of her truck's bumper to look him in the eye, is for rich boys to look where they're going. Rich boys. Jonathan's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. I'm a respected businessman. And I'm the Queen of England, Your Majesty. Melissa curtsied mockingly, nearly falling off the bumper. That's when Jonathan caught her. For exactly 2.7 seconds, they were frozen in a perfect dip, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, both staring into each other's eyes like they'd forgotten how to blink. Well, Melissa said breathlessly, this is awkward. Tremendously, Jonathan agreed, not moving. You can let go now. Right. Yes, of course. But he didn't. What's your name? Why? So you can have your lawyers send me a cease and desist? So I can make you an offer you can't refuse. Melissa snorted. What is this, The Godfather? Are you going to put a horse head in my bed? $50,000. The snort died in her throat. Come again? $50,000 plus a brand new food truck plus all permits and licenses. Jonathan finally released her, checking his Rolex. In exchange for 7 days of your time. So 7 days doing what? Cleaning your mansion? Walking your poodle? Oh God. You're not into weird stuff, are you? Pretending to be my wife. The silence that followed was so profound that even the honking Manhattan traffic seemed to pause out of respect. Your wife? Melissa's voice climbed 3 octaves. Temporary wife. 7 days. There's a business convention in Miami and I need people to think I'm married. You need people to think you're married. Melissa repeated slowly, like she was translating from ancient Greek. Why? Jonathan ran his hand through his hair, destroying his perfect businessman look. Because I may have implied to some very traditional Japanese investors that I have a wife. You lied? I didn't lie. My assistant lied. I just... didn't correct him. "Oh, well, that's completely different," Melissa said sarcastically. "You're not a liar. You're just morally flexible." "I'm desperate." The admission burst out of him so loudly that several pedestrians stopped to stare. These investors think married men are more stable, more trustworthy. If they find out I lied, I lose the biggest deal of my career. And why exactly should I care about your career? Because, Jonathan stepped closer, his blue eyes intense. You just lost yours. Melissa's mouth fell open. You did not just... I'll throw in a restaurant. A what now? A restaurant. Small place, maybe in Soho. You're a chef, right? The apron, the truck, the way you're lovingly cradling that spatula. Melissa looked down. She was indeed clutching a spatula, like it was a lifeline. I'm not a chef. I'm a culinary school dropout who makes tacos. Even better, more authentic. Jonathan was talking faster now, checking his watch again. Look, I have a meeting in exactly 11 minutes. I need a wife. You need money. It's a business transaction. A business transaction, Melissa repeated flatly. Completely professional. Separate rooms, no funny business, just smile and nod for 7 days. Smile and nod. And occasionally hold my hand. Hold your hand. And maybe kiss me once or twice. For authenticity. Kiss you? On the cheek, maybe the forehead. Very PG. Melissa stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing. Not the hyena laugh from before, but genuine, belly-deep laughter that made her eyes water. You're insane, she gasped. Probably. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Undoubtedly. I don't even know your last name. Reed. Jonathan Reed. Jonathan Reed? Melissa's eyes widened. Wait, the Jonathan Reed? Reed Enterprises? Forbes 30 under 30? The guy who bought that tech company with his lunch money? It wasn't lunch money, it was my coffee budget. But yes. Oh my God. Melissa sat down heavily on her truck's bumper. I'm being propositioned by a billionaire. Multimillionaire. The billion comes next year. That's not helping. Jonathan crouched down to her level. Listen, I know this is crazy, but look at it this way. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. I could lose my dignity. Dignity doesn't pay rent. Wow, inspirational poster material right there. I'm serious. 7 days, $50,000, and a food truck that actually has working air conditioning. Melissa glanced at her truck, where steam was indeed rising from the engine. It does get a little warm. So what do you say? Jonathan extended his hand. Partners? Melissa stared at his hand, like it might bite her. Around them, the chaos of Manhattan continued. Horns honking, people yelling, sirens wailing. But in this moment, her entire future balanced on a handshake. I want 75,000, she said suddenly. What? You heard me. 75,000. The truck, the restaurant, and I want it all in writing. Contracts, lawyers, the whole 9 yards. Jonathan's lips twitched. Are you negotiating with me? I'm a New Yorker. I negotiate with street vendors over hot dogs. You think I'm gonna roll over for a billionaire? Multi-millionaire. Whatever, money bags. Jonathan stood up, straightening his tie. 75,000 it is. And the restaurant? And the restaurant. And you keep your hands to yourself? Unless it's for show. Deal. Melissa stood and shook his hand firmly. But I have one condition. What's that? If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of sick joke or weird rich person game, I will destroy you. I will make your life so miserable that you'll wish you'd never bought that stupid car. Jonathan smiled. The first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Deal, but I have a condition too. What? We're leaving for Miami in 2 hours. 2 hours? The meeting moved up. My assistant just texted me. But I need to pack and shower and mentally prepare for this complete insanity. You can shower at my place. I'll have my assistant buy you clothes. Your assistant buys women's clothes? Trevor is very versatile. Melissa threw her hands up. Of course he is. Of course your assistant is a clothing shopping wizard. Why wouldn't he be? So is that a yes? Melissa looked one last time at her destroyed food truck, then at the handsome, desperate billionaire who'd just offered her more money than she'd ever dreamed of. God help me, she muttered, then louder. It's a yes. Excellent. Jonathan was already flagging down a taxi. Oh, and Melissa. Yeah? They think we've been married for 3 years and have a dog named Mr. Whiskers. Are you kidding me? Surprise. As the taxi pulled away, leaving behind the wreckage of her old life, Melissa Santos realized she'd just agreed to the most insane week of her existence. And Jonathan Reed realized he'd just hired the most dangerous woman in New York. Because somewhere between the yelling and the negotiating, something had shifted. Something that felt a lot like chemistry, and that was definitely not in the contract. Remove your clothes. Melissa froze in the marble foyer of Jonathan's penthouse, clutching her purse like a weapon. Excuse me? The apron, Jonathan clarified, loosening his tie. You're covered in taco sauce, and we have exactly 47 minutes before. Trevor! A voice sang from somewhere in the apartment. I've assembled the wife. A tall, impossibly stylish man appeared, carrying what looked like a small boutique in his arms. His eyes landed on Melissa and widened. Oh, honey, no. Trevor dropped the clothes and circled her like a shark. This won't do at all. Trevor, meet Melissa. Melissa Trevor, my assistant / life coordinator / miracle worker, Trevor finished. And sweetie, I'm about to work the biggest miracle since the loaves and fishes. He clapped his hands. Strip. I am not stripping for anyone. Melissa backed toward the door. Darling, I'm gayer than a rainbow unicorn at Pride Parade. Your virtue is safe. Trevor grabbed her hand. But those clothes? They need to die. 30 minutes later, Melissa stood in front of a mirror, completely transformed. The elegant navy dress hugged her curves perfectly. Her hair was swept into a sophisticated chignon, and makeup had somehow made her look like a movie star. I look, she breathed, like a woman who could marry a millionaire, Trevor beamed. Now, quick wife lesson. What's Jonathan's favorite food? Pizza. Coffee order? Black, 2 sugars. Pet peeve? People who don't use turn signals. That's oddly specific, Jonathan called from the next room. You literally ranted about it in the taxi, Melissa shot back. She's got you there, boss, Trevor grinned. Now the most important question, what's your story? Our story? How you met, why you fell in love, your first kiss. We haven't thought about, Melissa began. College. Jonathan appeared, straightening his cufflinks. We met in college. Which college? Trevor asked. Harvard, Jonathan said, just as Melissa said. Community college. Trevor's eyes went wide. This is a disaster. No, it works, Jonathan said quickly. She was visiting a friend, and we bumped into each other at the library. What were you studying? Melissa asked. Business, you? Culinary arts, obviously. And your first kiss? They stared at each other blankly. Under the stars, Melissa improvised, after a terrible first date. Terrible? Jonathan looked offended. You took me to a sushi place. I didn't know you hated sushi. I told you I was allergic to seafood. You said you were allergic to shellfish. People? Trevor clapped loudly. You sound like a real married couple already. Time to go. In the elevator down to the lobby, Melissa practiced her story under her breath. Met at Harvard, first kiss under stars, married 3 years, dog named Mr. Whiskers. Why Mr. Whiskers? She asked Jonathan. I panicked. My childhood hamster was named Mr. Whiskers. Your hamster? He was very distinguished. The elevator opened to reveal a black limousine waiting outside. Okay, Jonathan said, taking her hand. Remember, we're madly in love. Right, madly in love. Melissa's heart skipped as his fingers intertwined with hers. How hard can it be? 20 minutes later, in the Reed Enterprises boardroom, Melissa discovered exactly how hard it could be. "Ah, Reed-san." A distinguished Japanese man in an impeccable suit stood as they entered. "And this must be the famous wife." "Mr. Tanaka," Jonathan bowed slightly. "May I present my wife, Melissa?" "Pleasure to meet you," Melissa smiled, offering her hand. "The pleasure is mine." Mr. Tanaka shook her hand warmly. "Jonathan speaks of you constantly. Such devotion is rare in young men today." "Well, he's pretty devoted to me, too," Melissa said, squeezing Jonathan's hand perhaps a little too hard. "Please sit. Tell me, how do you balance marriage with Jonathan's demanding career?" Melissa's mind went blank. "We communicate?" "Ah, wise. And your own career? Jonathan mentioned you work in food service?" "I own a restaurant," she said, then caught herself. "Well, I'm opening one, soon." "How exciting. What type of cuisine?" "Mexican. Well, Mexican-American, fusion, Tex-Mex with a New York twist and—" She was babbling. Jonathan squeezed her hand. "It sounds delicious," Mr. Tanaka smiled. "You must cook for Jonathan often." "Oh, yes," Jonathan jumped in. "She makes the most amazing—" "Sushi," Melissa said. At the same time, Jonathan said, "Tacos." Mr. Tanaka's eyebrows rose. "Sushi tacos," they said in unison. "Fascinating. I must try this fusion cuisine. Perhaps you could demonstrate?" "Demonstrate?" Melissa's voice cracked. "Yes, my wife would be delighted to meet you. We're having a small dinner party tonight. You must join us." Jonathan and Melissa exchanged panicked glances. "We'd love to," Jonathan said weakly. "Wonderful. And please bring Mr. Whiskers. My wife adores dogs." After Mr. Tanaka left, Melissa buried her face in her hands. "Sushi tacos," she groaned. "We can figure this out," Jonathan said, though he didn't sound convinced. "And Mr. Whiskers, we need to produce a dog." "I know someone who can help with that." "Who?" "Trevor." "Trevor has a dog?" "Trevor has everything." 3 hours later, they stood outside an elegant townhouse on the Upper East Side, holding the leash of a perfectly groomed golden retriever wearing a bow tie. "Where did Trevor even find this dog?" Melissa whispered. "I stopped asking Trevor questions like that years ago," Jonathan replied, straightening his jacket. The door opened to reveal Mrs. Tanaka, a petite woman with kind eyes and an enormous smile. "Welcome. You must be Melissa, and this handsome boy must be Mr. Whiskers." The dog immediately sat and offered his paw. "Oh my," Mrs. Tanaka giggled. "So well trained." "He's very special," Melissa managed. "Come, come. Dinner is nearly ready. I hope you brought your sushi taco recipe." In the kitchen, Melissa stared at the ingredients Mrs. Tanaka had assembled. Fresh fish, nori, rice, and taco shells. "This is impossible," she whispered to Jonathan. "You're a chef. I make tacos, not whatever this Frankenstein creation is supposed to be. Figure it out." "Mr. and Mrs. Reed," Mrs. Tanaka appeared. "Ready to begin?" Melissa took a deep breath. "Absolutely." What followed was 30 minutes of pure chaos disguised as cooking. Melissa improvised wildly, combining ingredients that had no business being together, while Jonathan provided enthusiastic but completely unhelpful commentary. "And now she adds the special secret ingredient," Jonathan said, as Melissa desperately squeezed lime over everything. "Love," Melissa said, throwing him a murderous look. "The secret ingredient is love." "Ah, beautiful!" Mrs. Tanaka clapped. The final product looked like a crime against cuisine, but somehow it worked. The soft taco shell cradled perfectly seasoned fish, crisp vegetables, and a surprisingly delicious sauce that Melissa had created through pure panic. "Extraordinary," Mr. Tanaka declared after his first bite. "Such innovation." "It's actually not terrible," Melissa whispered to Jonathan in amazement. "See, you're brilliant under pressure. I'm brilliant under extreme terror. There's a difference." As the evening wound down, The Tanakas walked them to the door. "Such a lovely couple," Mrs. Tanaka sighed. "You can see the love between you." "Thank you," Melissa said, meaning it. "One question," Mr. Tanaka said thoughtfully. "How long have you been married?" 3 years, they said together. "Ah, but which anniversary? The wedding or when you first knew you loved each other?" Melissa and Jonathan stared at each other. In the soft porch light, something passed between them. A moment of recognition, of possibility. "The same day," Melissa said quietly. "We knew immediately." "How romantic," Mrs. Tanaka sighed. As they walked to the car, Mr. Whiskers trotting contentedly between them, Jonathan cleared his throat. You were amazing tonight. You weren't terrible yourself. About what you said back there. I was improvising." "Right, of course." But as they drove through the city lights, both wondered if maybe, just maybe, some improvisations contained more truth than fiction. "So," Melissa said, breaking the comfortable silence, "tomorrow we fly to Miami." "Tomorrow we fly to Miami." "And pretend to be madly in love for an entire week?" "Shouldn't be too hard," Jonathan said, then caught himself. "I mean, we're getting good at the pretending part." "Right," Melissa agreed. "The pretending part." Neither mentioned that the pretending was starting to feel dangerously real. Holy guacamole. Melissa stood in the doorway of their Miami penthouse suite, jaw practically on the marble floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed an endless ocean view, while the living room looked like it belonged in a Billionaire's magazine. "It's adequate," Jonathan said, wheeling his suitcase past her. "Adequate?" Melissa spun around. "There's a hot tub on the balcony. And is that a piano? Who needs a piano in a hotel room?" "Someone who plays piano." "Do you play piano?" "No." "Then why—" Melissa stopped mid-sentence, noticing something crucial. "There's only one bedroom." Jonathan froze. "What?" "One. Bedroom. Singular. As in, one bed, one room, one very big problem." They both rushed to the bedroom door. Sure enough, one massive king-size bed dominated the space, covered in rose petals and champagne chilling nearby. "I specifically requested 2 rooms," Jonathan muttered, pulling out his phone. "Well, your travel agent apparently thinks we're really married. Trevor booked this." "Of course he did." Melissa flopped onto a chair. "So what now? You sleep in the bathtub?" "I'll take the couch." "That couch costs more than my rent." "I'll take the couch." "Absolutely not." "Why? Because I'm a delicate flower who can't handle sleeping on furniture?" "Because you're a guest." "I'm a fake wife. There's a difference." Their argument was interrupted by a knock at the door. Jonathan opened it to reveal a hotel employee with a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of the Fontainebleau, Mr. and Mrs. Reed, congratulations on your 3rd anniversary." "Our what now?" Melissa called from the bedroom. "Thank you," Jonathan said quickly, accepting the champagne. After the employee left, Melissa emerged holding a card. "Apparently, the hotel thinks today is our anniversary. They've planned a whole romantic dinner. We can cancel." "Are you insane? Do you know how much a dinner here costs? I'm eating that meal if it kills me." "It's not a real anniversary, but it's real food." 2 hours later, Melissa understood why Jonathan looked nervous. The restaurant was elegant beyond belief, filled with Miami's elite, and she felt like an imposter despite her designer dress. "Relax," Jonathan murmured, his hand on her lower back. "You belong here." "No, I don't. I belong in a food truck serving tacos to construction workers." "You belong wherever you want to be." Before Melissa could respond, a voice cut through the ambient restaurant noise like nails on a chalkboard. "Jonathan? Jonathan Reed?" They turned to see a statuesque blonde approaching, her smile predatory, and her dress probably worth more than Melissa's education. "Madison," Jonathan said, his voice carefully neutral. "I thought that was you." Madison air-kissed both his cheeks, completely ignoring Melissa. "What are you doing in Miami? Business, I assume." "Actually, I'm here with my wife." Jonathan's arm tightened around Melissa's waist. Madison's eyes finally landed on Melissa, scanning her like a barcode. Wife? How quaint. I don't believe we've met. Melissa Reed. Melissa extended her hand with a smile that could have powered the city. Madison Ashworth. Jonathan and I used to be very close. Used to be, Jonathan emphasized. Oh, don't be modest, darling. We were practically engaged before you got cold feet. Madison turned to Melissa with fake sympathy. Did he tell you about that? How he proposed to me in the Hamptons, then disappeared for 3 months? Melissa felt Jonathan tense beside her. He mentioned you, she said sweetly. Something about dodging a bullet? Madison's smile faltered. Excuse me? Oh, did I say that out loud? Melissa laughed. I meant to say blessing. Dodging a blessing. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense either. Melissa, Jonathan warned, but she could hear him fighting laughter. I'm sorry. I'm still learning English idioms. What do you call it when you escape from someone who's clearly high maintenance and possibly crazy? Darling. Madison's voice turned icy. Are you calling me crazy? Oh no, I would never. Crazy would imply you're interesting. The silence that followed was so profound that nearby tables turned to stare. Jonathan looked like he was trying not to choke on his wine. Well, Madison said finally, I can see why Jonathan chose differently this time. Thank you, Melissa beamed. He said the same thing. Something about preferring women with souls? Madison's face turned red. Jonathan, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Actually, Jonathan said, standing and dropping money on the table, I think we're done here. Madison, always a displeasure. As they walked away, Melissa could feel Madison's death glare burning into her back. That was, Jonathan began once they were outside. Terrible? Embarrassing? A complete disaster? Magnificent. Jonathan stopped walking and turned to face her. She's been making my life miserable for 2 years, and you destroyed her in under 5 minutes. She deserved it. Nobody gets to talk about my fake husband like that. Your fake husband? You know what I mean. They stood there in the Miami night, palm trees swaying around them, the sound of waves in the distance. Something had shifted. The air felt electric. Melissa, Jonathan said softly. Yeah? Thank you for defending me. Don't mention it. That's what fake wives do, right? Right. Fake wives. But the way he was looking at her didn't feel fake at all. We should go back, Melissa said, her voice barely a whisper. We should. Neither of them moved. The thing is, Jonathan said, stepping closer, I'm starting to forget this is pretend. That's dangerous. Probably. Definitely. Melissa. Yeah. I'm going to kiss you now. For practice, in case anyone's watching. Melissa glanced around the empty beach. There's no one watching. Then I'm going to kiss you because I want to. That's not in the contract. Screw the contract. When his lips met hers, Melissa's entire world tilted. This wasn't a fake kiss for show. This was real and desperate and absolutely perfect. Her hands found his hair, his arms pulled her closer, and for a moment, nothing else existed. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. That was, Melissa began. A mistake? Jonathan asked, his forehead resting against hers. I was going to say incredible. Oh, good. But also a mistake. Probably. This complicates things. Definitely. So what do we do now? Jonathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. Now we go back to being professional. I have a breakfast meeting at 7. Right. Professional. As they walked back to the hotel, both wondered if professional was even possible anymore. Because that kiss had changed everything, and they both knew it. Back in the suite, they stood awkwardly by the bedroom door. So, Melissa said, bed situation. I'll take the couch. Jonathan, yeah? That kiss was practice. Right, Practice. For tomorrow. For tomorrow. But as Melissa lay in the enormous bed alone, staring at the ceiling, she knew tomorrow was going to be the hardest day of her life. Because pretending not to have feelings for Jonathan Reed was going to be impossible. In the living room, Jonathan stared out at the ocean, his lips still tingling from their kiss. He'd hired Melissa to solve a business problem. He hadn't expected her to become the biggest problem of all. Because somewhere between the taco truck and Miami, he'd done the one thing he'd sworn never to do again. He'd fallen in love. Melissa woke up to the sound of Jonathan's phone ringing at 5:47 a.m. Through the bedroom door, she could hear his panicked voice. "What do you mean they moved the presentation to this morning?" "Trevor, I specifically said—" She padded to the living room in her pajamas to find Jonathan pacing, his hair a mess, still in yesterday's clothes. "No, we can't postpone. They're flying back to Tokyo tonight." He spotted Melissa and mouthed, "Sorry. Just fix it. However you have to fix it." "What's wrong?" Melissa asked when he hung up. "The presentation got moved up, like way up. It starts in 2 hours." "Okay, that's manageable." And Madison somehow got herself invited. "What?" "Apparently, her father is one of the investors I didn't know about." Jonathan slumped onto the couch. "She's going to destroy everything. Not if I destroy her first." Jonathan looked up, surprised by the venom in her voice. "I'm serious," Melissa continued. "Yesterday was just a warm-up. Today I'm going full scorched earth." "Melissa, you don't understand. Madison is vicious. She knows people, has connections. And I know how to survive in New York without a trust fund. I think I can handle one spoiled princess." 2 hours later, in the Fontainebleau's largest conference room, Melissa realized she might have underestimated her opponent. Madison sat at the far end of the table like a queen holding court, surrounded by investors who hung on her every word. She'd somehow changed into a power suit that screamed, "Serious businesswoman," while Melissa felt like a kid playing dress-up. "Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Reed!" Mr. Tanaka stood as they entered. "Perfect timing." "Sorry we're late," Jonathan said, his hand finding Melissa's automatically. "Not late at all," Madison smiled sweetly. "We were just discussing the importance of family stability in business partnerships." "How relevant," Melissa replied, matching her saccharine tone. Jonathan's presentation started smoothly. His business acumen was undeniable, his projections impressive, his vision clear. Melissa found herself genuinely admiring his competence. Then Madison struck. "This all sounds wonderful, Jonathan," she interrupted during his closing remarks. "But I do have one concern." "Yes?" Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Well, it's just, marriage is such a partnership, isn't it? And I couldn't help but notice at dinner last night that your wife seemed a little unfamiliar with your business practices." "I'm sorry?" Melissa said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Oh, nothing personal, dear. It's just that when Mr. Yamamoto asked about your husband's expansion into the Asian markets, you looked completely lost." The room fell silent. Melissa felt every eye on her, and her heart started racing. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Jonathan began. "Has there?" Madison's smile turned predatory. "Because I'm also curious about your anniversary. Yesterday you celebrated 3 years, but your wedding announcement in the Times was only 18 months ago." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Melissa could feel sweat beading on her forehead. "The Times announcement was delayed," she said quickly. "We had a small ceremony first. How romantic." "And where was this small ceremony?" "Martha's Vineyard." "Central Park," Jonathan said at the same time. Madison's laugh filled the room like breaking glass. "How interesting. You can't even agree on where you got married." "It was a long weekend," Melissa said desperately. "We had 2 ceremonies." "Oh, please." Madison stood up, triumphant. "Gentlemen, I think we all know what's happening here." "Madison, stop." Jonathan's voice was deadly quiet. "Jonathan Reed hired this woman to pose as his wife because he lied to you about being married." The words hit the room like a bomb. Investors shifted uncomfortably, murmured to each other in Japanese, looked between Jonathan and Melissa with dawning understanding. "She's a complete stranger," Madison continued. "Probably some actress he picked up." "Enough!" Everyone turned to stare at Melissa, who had shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You want to know the truth?" Melissa's voice shook with rage. "Fine, here's the truth." "Melissa, don't," Jonathan warned. "No, she wants to play games? Let's play." Melissa turned to face the investors. "Madison is absolutely right. Jonathan hired me to pretend to be his wife." Gasps echoed around the room. Jonathan's face went pale. "But you know what else is true," Melissa continued, her voice growing stronger. "In the past 3 days, I've watched this man work 18-hour days to make sure every detail of this presentation was perfect. I've seen him panic about disappointing people he's never met because his word means everything to him." "Melissa, I'm not finished." She spun to face Madison. "And I've watched you spend 2 days trying to sabotage him because you can't handle rejection. Yes, he lied about being married. But at least he's not a bitter, vindictive—" "How much is he paying you?" Madison interrupted. The question hit Melissa like a slap. "What?" "To defend him, to pretend to love him." "How much?" Melissa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Because the honest answer was $75,000, and suddenly that felt like the most shameful thing in the world. "Thought so," Madison smirked. "It's not about the money," Melissa whispered. "Isn't it? You're a nobody from nowhere, and he's offering you more money than you've ever seen. Of course you'd say anything." "Stop." Jonathan's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Madison, that's enough." "Is it, Jonathan? Because I think these gentlemen deserve to know exactly what kind of business partner they're dealing with. Someone who lies, who manipulates, who pays women to— "Get out!" Jonathan's roar silenced the room. He stood slowly, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Get out, Madison. Now. You can't throw me out. Your father isn't here. I am. And this is my presentation, in my rented room, and you are no longer welcome." "Fine." Madison gathered her purse with exaggerated dignity. "But this isn't over, Jonathan. You've humiliated yourself and your company. No one will ever trust you again." After she left, the silence was deafening. Mr. Tanaka cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should take a recess." "No." Jonathan straightened his tie, his professional mask sliding back into place. "You came here for a business presentation, and that's what you'll get. My personal life, real or fabricated, doesn't change the numbers. It doesn't change the projections, the market analysis, or the potential for profit. But the trust issue," another investor began. "The trust issue is valid." Jonathan nodded. "I lied. I hired someone to pretend to be my wife because I thought it would make you more comfortable. That was wrong, and I apologize." Melissa watched him, her heart breaking. He was trying to salvage something from the wreckage she'd created. "However," Jonathan continued, "the business opportunity remains unchanged. You can choose to work with a company that just demonstrated its ability to think creatively under pressure. Or you can walk away from the most profitable investment of your careers because I'm not married." He sat down calmly. "The choice is yours." 20 minutes later, after the investors had filed out, promising to discuss and get back to them, Melissa and Jonathan stood alone in the conference room. "I'm sorry," Melissa whispered. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" "Telling the truth?" "For ruining everything." Jonathan loosened his tie, suddenly looking exhausted. "You didn't ruin anything, Melissa. I did. The moment I came up with this insane plan. But if I hadn't lost my temper, Madison would have found another way." "She always does." They stood in the wreckage of his dreams, and Melissa felt her heart shatter completely. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Jonathan picked up his briefcase. "Now I go back to New York and try to salvage what's left of my company. And you go back to your life." Jonathan? The contract's fulfilled, Melissa. You did everything I asked and more. Trevor will transfer the money this afternoon. I don't want the money. Jonathan stopped. What? I said I don't want the money. You earned it. By destroying your life. By being honest when I couldn't be. Melissa felt tears stinging her eyes. This isn't how it was supposed to end. No. Jonathan agreed quietly. It wasn't. He walked toward the door, then paused without turning around. For what it's worth, Melissa, the last 3 days were the best I've had in years. Even if they were fake. They weren't fake, she whispered. But he was already gone. Melissa stood alone in the empty conference room, surrounded by abandoned coffee cups and crumpled papers, and realized that somewhere between the taco truck and the truth, she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd fallen in love with a man she was hired to pretend to love. And now it was too late. 3 weeks later, New York. Melissa stared at the check on her kitchen table like it was a venomous snake. $75,000. More money than she'd ever seen in one place. More money than she'd dreamed of. She'd rather burn it. You're being ridiculous, her best friend Carmen said, waving a fork loaded with takeout Chinese food. It's money. You worked for it. I destroyed a man's life for it. You told the truth. I lost my temper and ruined everything he'd worked for. Melissa pushed the check away. His company stock dropped 30%, Carmen. 30%. That's not your fault, isn't it? Melissa finally looked up from the check. He hired me to help him, and I made everything worse. Carmen studied her friend's face, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she'd lost weight, the general misery that had settled over her like a cloud. You love him. It wasn't a question. It doesn't matter, Melissa whispered. Of course it matters. It's the only thing that matters. He was paying me to pretend to love him, Carmen. How pathetic is that? You weren't pretending at the end. But he doesn't know that. Carmen leaned forward. So tell him. Tell him what? Hey, Jonathan, remember when you hired me to fake marry you and I accidentally fell in love and then destroyed your life? Want to grab coffee? Yes, exactly that. You're insane. And you're miserable. Carmen pointed her fork at the untouched check. Look, either cash that check and use it to forget him, or tear it up and go get him. But stop sitting here feeling sorry for yourself. After Carmen left, Melissa sat alone with the check and her thoughts. She pulled out her phone and Googled Jonathan's name, something she'd been doing obsessively for 3 weeks. The headlines made her stomach hurt. Reed Enterprises stock continues decline. Investors pull out of major tech deal. CEO Jonathan Reed. Where did it all go wrong? She scrolled through the articles, each one making her feel worse. Then she found something that made her heart stop. Reed Enterprises, CEO announces company sale. The article was from that morning. Jonathan was selling his company. Her phone rang. Trevor's name flashed on the screen. Hello? Melissa, darling. Thank God you answered. Trevor? How did you get my number? I have many talents. Listen, I need you to come to Jonathan's office, now. I can't. He's selling the company, Melissa. I know, I saw the news. No, you don't understand. He's selling it for nothing, practically giving it away. He's destroying himself. Melissa's heart clenched. Why are you calling me? Because in 3 weeks, I've watched that man turn into a zombie. He works 20-hour days, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep. And yesterday I caught him staring at your picture. My picture? From the business dinner. You're both smiling, and you look happy. Real happy. Melissa closed her eyes. Trevor. He loves you. The words hit her like a physical blow. He doesn't. Sweetie, I've worked for that man for 5 years. I've seen him with models, actresses, socialites, business executives. I have never, and I mean never, seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you. But I ruined everything. You saved him from a lie. There's a difference. An hour later, Melissa stood outside the Reed Enterprises building, her heart pounding. She'd changed clothes 3 times, practiced what she'd say, and chickened out twice before making it to the elevator. The 28th floor was chaos. Boxes everywhere, people clearing out desks, the unmistakable feeling of an ending. "Melissa!" She turned to see Trevor rushing toward her, looking frazzled but relieved. "Thank God you came. He's in his office, but fair warning, he looks terrible. Maybe this is a mistake." The only mistake would be walking away again. Trevor led her through the maze of boxes to a corner office. Through the glass walls, she could see Jonathan at his desk, surrounded by papers, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Sir?" Trevor knocked. "You have a visitor." Jonathan looked up, and when his eyes met Melissa's through the glass, the pen in his hand snapped in half. "I'll give you two some privacy," Trevor said, practically pushing Melissa through the door. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. "Hi," Melissa said finally. "Hi." Jonathan's voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "You look awful." "Thanks." "You look—" He paused, really looking at her. "Beautiful. You look beautiful." Melissa felt her cheeks flush. "I brought you something." She pulled the uncashed check from her purse and placed it on his desk. "What's this?" "My payment. I never cashed it." Jonathan stared at the check. "Why not?" "Because I didn't earn it." "You did everything I asked. I fell in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, like a confession and a prayer. Jonathan went very still. "What?" "I fell in love with you," Melissa repeated, her voice stronger. "Somewhere between the taco truck in Miami, between pretending to be your wife and actually wanting to be your wife. I fell in love with you, and that wasn't in the contract. Melissa, I know you're selling the company. I know everything's falling apart. And I know it's my fault. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. If I hadn't lost my temper with Madison. If you hadn't defended me, you mean." Jonathan stood up slowly. "If you hadn't stood up for someone you barely knew because you thought he was worth defending. You are worth defending." "Am I?" Jonathan laughed bitterly. "I lied to investors, hired a fake wife, and lost everything anyway. You didn't lose everything. I lost my company, my reputation, my investors. You didn't lose me." Jonathan stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "You didn't lose me. I mean, you never had me, not really, but—" Melissa took a deep breath. "I'm here, if you want me. Really me, not fake wife me. Just me." Jonathan stared at her for a long moment, then walked around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "The night in Miami," he said quietly. "When you said the kiss wasn't fake, it wasn't. Neither was anything else. Not for me. Jonathan, I love you." The words tumbled out like he'd been holding them back for weeks. "I love that you negotiate with street vendors and defend people you barely know and make sushi tacos that somehow taste amazing. I love that you're fierce and funny and completely terrifying when you're angry. You love me? I love you so much it's been killing me for 3 weeks." "Then why are you selling the company?" Jonathan shrugged. "What's the point? I built it to prove something, to show the world I was successful. But success doesn't mean anything if you don't have someone to share it with." Melissa reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "You idiot." "Excuse me?" "You beautiful, brilliant idiot. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. And you don't need to sell your company. The investors won't come back. So find new ones, build something better, start over. With what capital?" "With this." Melissa picked up the check and pressed it into his hands. "It's not much, but it's a start." Jonathan looked down at the check, then back at her. "You want to invest in my company? I want to invest in you. That's a terrible business decision. Probably. I might lose everything again. We might lose everything. There's a difference." Jonathan's smile was the first real one she'd seen since Miami. Are you proposing a partnership, Ms. Santos? I'm proposing whatever you want, Mr. Reed. Business partner, investor, girlfriend. She paused, her heart in her throat. Wife. Real wife this time? Real wife. Real wedding? Real everything. Jonathan kissed her then, right there in his office, surrounded by boxes and broken dreams, and it was nothing like their first kiss in Miami. This one was a promise, a beginning, a choice they were both making with their eyes wide open. When they broke apart, Melissa grinned. So, about that company sale. Cancelled, Jonathan said immediately. Good. Because I have some ideas about expanding into the food service industry. Of course you do. Also, we're going to need a new assistant. What's wrong with Trevor? Nothing. But we're going to need someone to plan our wedding. Jonathan laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. I think Trevor would be perfect for that job. Definitely. As if summoned, Trevor appeared in the doorway with champagne and glasses. I take it the crisis is over? He asked hopefully. The crisis is over, Jonathan confirmed, his arm around Melissa's waist. Thank God. Now, about the wedding. Trevor, Melissa interrupted. How do you feel about sushi tacos at the reception? Darling, Trevor grinned. I thought you'd never ask. Outside the office windows, New York City stretched out before them, full of possibilities and new beginnings. And for the first time since a certain BMW had collided with a certain taco truck, everything felt exactly right. 6 months later, Central Park. I can't believe you're making me wear a bow tie again. Mr. Whiskers, now permanently adopted and renamed just Whiskers, sat patiently as Trevor adjusted his wedding attire for the third time. Darling, you're the ring bearer. Ring bearers wear bow ties. It's tradition. Speaking of tradition, Jonathan said, straightening his own tie, isn't it bad luck to see the bride before the wedding? Only if you believe in superstitions, Trevor replied. Besides, you two have already had the worst luck possible and survived. What's a little pre-wedding peek? Jonathan looked toward the bridal tent set up across the park's Bethesda fountain. Inside, he knew Melissa was getting ready with Carmen and her mother, who had flown in from Brazil specifically to meet the billionaire who crashed into my daughter's life. Nervous? Trevor asked. Terrified, Jonathan admitted. Good. Terror means it matters. Jonathan, a familiar voice called out. Mister. Tanaka approached with a warm smile, his wife beside him. Beautiful day for a wedding. Mr. Tanaka, I can't believe you came. Are you kidding? After your company's performance this quarter, we wouldn't miss it. Besides, his eyes twinkled, we want to taste these famous sushi tacos. Over the past 6 months, Reed Enterprises had not only recovered, but thrived. The authenticity of Jonathan's presentation and the story of how love had trumped business deception had somehow made investors trust him more, not less. Turns out, honesty was excellent marketing. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator called out. Jonathan's heart rate spiked. 5 minutes until what? Until you marry the woman of your dreams, obviously, Trevor said, brushing invisible lint off Jonathan's shoulder. Now stop hyperventilating and remember to breathe during the vows. As guests took their seats, Jonathan spotted familiar faces throughout the crowd. His parents, beaming with pride. Melissa's extended family, who had basically adopted him after one Sunday dinner. Even some of the food truck vendors from Melissa's old route, wearing their finest clothes. And there, in the back row, trying to look invisible. Is that Madison? Trevor squinted. What is she doing here? Probably plotting revenge, or hoping you'll change your mind. Should I have security remove her? Jonathan considered it, then shook his head. Let her stay. She needs to see what real love looks like. The string quartet began playing, and Jonathan took his position at the altar. His hands were shaking. Carmen appeared first, walking down the aisle in a bridesmaid dress the color of sunset, grinning like she'd personally orchestrated this entire love story, which, according to her, she had. Then Whiskers trotted down the aisle, the rings tied to his bow tie, stopping to accept pets from several guests before remembering his job. The music changed to the wedding march, and everyone stood. And then Melissa appeared. Jonathan forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple white dress that somehow looked like it was made of starlight, her dark hair crowned with small white flowers. But it was her smile that stopped his heart, radiant, genuine, and aimed directly at him. As she walked toward him, Jonathan remembered every moment that had brought them here. The crash that started it all. The fake marriage that became real feelings. The fight that tore them apart. The love that brought them back together. When her father placed her hand in his, Melissa whispered, "Hi, husband." "Hi, wife," he whispered back. The officiant, a friend of Melissa's family, began the ceremony with a smile. "Dearly beloved, we gather today to witness something truly extraordinary. Not just the marriage of Jonathan and Melissa, but the transformation of a business contract into the real deal." Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. "Jonathan and Melissa have asked to write their own vows." "Jonathan?" Jonathan pulled out a piece of paper, then looked at Melissa and crumpled it up. "I wrote a speech," he said, his voice carrying across the silent park. "Something about quarterly projections and long-term investments and sustainable growth. But that's not us." Melissa's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. "Melissa Santos," Jonathan continued, taking her hands, "you crashed into my life, literally, and turned everything upside down. You made me laugh when I forgot how. You defended me when I didn't deserve it. You loved me when I was paying you not to." "You weren't paying me not to love you," Melissa interrupted, making everyone laugh. "That wasn't in the contract." "No, it wasn't. And I'm grateful every day that you're a terrible employee." "Hey, I promise to love you without contracts or conditions. I promise to always order extra tacos, even when you insist the food truck isn't too far away. And I promise that if I ever hire another fake wife, it'll be you." "You better not need another fake wife," Melissa warned, then turned to the crowd. "My turn." She didn't have notes either. "Jonathan Reed, you are the most stubbornly honorable man I've ever met. You hired me to pretend to love you, and then spent every day making it impossible not to love you for real." Jonathan's eyes were definitely watery now. "You respected me when you could have used me. You protected me when you could have blamed me. And you chose love over success, which, let's be honest, is crazy, because you're really successful, and I make tacos for a living." "The best tacos," Jonathan said firmly. "I promise to love you through boardroom disasters and kitchen catastrophes. I promise to always tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. And I promise that our marriage will be nothing like our contract. No end date, no fine print, and definitely no fake anything. Do you, Jonathan, take Melissa to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do. Forever." "Do you, Melissa, take Jonathan to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do. For real this time. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jonathan, you may kiss your bride." "About time," Jonathan murmured, pulling Melissa into his arms. Their kiss was different from the one in Miami, deeper, more sure, with the promise of forever behind it. When they broke apart, the crowd erupted in cheers. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "Mr. and Mrs. Reed." As they walked back down the aisle together, Melissa spotted Madison in the back row. Instead of anger or smugness, the woman's face showed something unexpected, genuine sadness, maybe even regret. Melissa stopped walking. "What are you doing?" Jonathan whispered. "Something crazy." She walked over to Madison, leaving Jonathan and the entire wedding party confused. "Madison, Melissa, you look..." Madison paused, then said quietly, "Beautiful, really beautiful. Thank you for coming. I shouldn't be here. Maybe not, but you are." Melissa glanced back at Jonathan, who was watching with concern. "Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot. I tried to destroy your marriage. You tried to protect someone you loved. I get that. Madison's eyes filled with tears. He never loved me back. That's not your fault. Love isn't negotiable. I was so awful to you. You were protecting your heart. I understand that too. Melissa reached out and squeezed Madison's hand. There's someone out there who will love you the way Jonathan loves me. But you have to let go of the past to find them. Madison nodded, tears spilling over. I'm sorry. For everything. I forgive you. As Melissa walked back to Jonathan, Madison quietly slipped away. The gesture wasn't lost on the guests, who had witnessed something rare. Grace, in the face of past hurt. What was that about? Jonathan asked as they continued down the aisle. Just closing the loop. I love you. I love you too. The reception was held at the same restaurant where they'd had their disastrous fake anniversary dinner. But this time, everything was real. The laughter, the joy, the terrible dancing, and yes, the sushi tacos. Speech! Speech! The crowd chanted as Trevor clinked his champagne glass. Jonathan stood up, pulling Melissa with him. 6 months ago, I hired this woman to solve a business problem, he began. Instead, she solved a life problem I didn't even know I had. Ah, Carmen called out. She taught me that the best things in life can't be contracted, negotiated, or planned. They just happen. Usually when a BMW hits a taco truck on Fifth Avenue. And ruins your life, Melissa added cheerfully. And ruins your life, Jonathan agreed, kissing her temple. The best kind of ruin. As the night wore on, guests danced under string lights while Whiskers held court by the dessert table, charming everyone out of cake scraps. No regrets? Melissa asked as they swayed to their first dance as a married couple. About the fake marriage plan? Definitely regrets. Hey, let me finish. I regret that it took a disaster to bring us together. I regret that we wasted time pretending when we could have been loving. But I don't regret a single moment that led us here. Even the part where I destroyed your business meeting? Especially that part. That's when I knew you were real. Real wives tend to be inconvenient. I'm counting on it. Later, as they cut the cake, a beautiful 3-tier creation with tiny sushi and taco decorations, Mr. Tanaka approached with his wife. Jonathan, Melissa, beautiful wedding. We have something for you. He handed Jonathan an envelope. What's this? A wedding gift. Our investment group has voted to triple our stake in Reed Enterprises. We believe in companies built on honesty. Mr. Tanaka, I don't know what to say. Say you'll name the new Miami office after your wife. The woman who taught you that authenticity is the best business strategy. As the night ended and guests began to leave, Melissa and Jonathan stood together on the restaurant's terrace, looking out at the city that had brought them together. So, Melissa said, what's next for Mr. and Mrs. Reed? Well, we have a honeymoon in Italy, a business to run, and according to Trevor, a dog who thinks he's a person. Sounds perfect. And maybe someday we can tell our kids about how Daddy hired Mommy to be his fake wife, and they fell in love anyway. Our kids are going to think we're insane. Probably. But they'll never doubt that we love each other. Melissa leaned against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. You know what the best part of tonight was? The part where you married me? The part where I married you and meant every word. No contracts this time. No contracts. Just love. Just love. As they watched the city lights twinkle below, both knew that their real adventure was just beginning. Because the 1-week contract that had started as a business deal had become something much more valuable. A lifetime of love, laughter, and the occasional sushi taco. The end.